exciting session. The maker movement seems to be really in the forefront these days, and we've got some fantastic panelists who are really at the cutting edge of this movement. And first of all, I'm going to introduce them. At the end there is Joanna Burson, who runs she's the head of education at Kano Limited, and Kano is a build-it-yourself computer for around £100, I believe, which looks pretty good. Next in line is Joe Clarsons. Joe runs the BBC Microbit website and was also part of the team that developed the concept of the microbit. And last but not least, there's Filippo Jacob, who is the managing director, I believe, of Primo Toys. And Primo Toys brings coding to children as young as 3, which I think is pretty astonishing. Now, I'm going to put everyone on the spot here because what I'm going to ask them to do is literally spend no more than 1 minute explaining to us how the maker movement in general, or at least what they do, ties in with the notion of 21st century skills. So, Joanna, can I ask you to start, please?
Problem solving, collaboration, and computational thinking. What we're trying to do is provide the tools that allow young people to understand the digital world around them, and a framework for them and their teachers, educators, parents to use those tools. So it's about demystifying technology, devices that are so prevalent and may just seem sealed off, understanding and then being able to contribute or to create in the digital world.
Hi there. I think what we wanted to do with Microbit is put it in the hands of up to 1 million 11 to 12-year-olds. And to get them creating and thinking digitally and creatively. And on the back of that, really, helping to develop their core skills and understanding around complex subjects in science and computing and engineering. And we feel that the Microbit helps to embed that complex understanding by making their learning tangible and by giving them feedback.
So we, at Primo Toys, we really tried to tackle the challenge of introducing computational thinking in as early an age group as possible, because we realized that at ages 3 to 6, you can have such a huge impact on a child and what he'll be interested in later on in life. And so what we tried to do is to take computational thinking and programming and distill it into a format that allows children to play with computational thinking concepts like programming and debugging or functions or subroutines. And we did this by creating a tangible programming language that doesn't require any screens or any literacy, so that it could be applied in the same way in every classroom, early years classroom, anywhere in the world, in the 90 countries that we're present in at the moment. And you get a chance to see it in a second.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, that's the theory. And obviously, we can't hand out kits to everyone here to play with, much as we'd like to. But I'm going to ask each of the panelists to spend a few minutes demonstrating what they've actually been talking about. So, Joanna.
Yep, and Filippo put the challenge to me to build this on stage, so that's exactly what I'll do. So Terry gave the introduction that we're a computer that you make yourself, a DIY computer. And a little bit more broadly, what we aim to be is an invention platform. So what comes in the box is aimed to get, and 2 of the things we'll talk about are getting kids to feel empowered in using technology and fluent in understanding the devices that are around them, and authenticity. So using those tools to solve authentic problems. So instead of receiving or consuming content or consuming what they may see on a tablet, we start with a box full of hardware showing what's inside of the computer. So getting them already to think about things that they may be curious about, understanding a little bit better what the digital devices that they're seeing are comprised of. So we really feel it's important to start with the hardware. And I'm multitasking here. So once they put the computer together and really feel that sense of empowerment that this thing that was once sealed off is now accessible to them, and they're able to describe the different components, the processing chip, the HDMI cables, the GPIO pins. They're then able to power up, and their screen lights up, and they're congratulated, and they feel that they're ready to then interact with Kano's interactive operating system. So they're guided through what we call story mode, which engages them and where they interact with the different parts of the computer. So they work through story mode, and we further demystify the computing system, describing operating systems and the different components of what's inside of devices in a very engaging and fun way. We guide learners writing their first lines of code. Then they engage with Kano's creative applications. So we've got Minecraft that they can code into using Kano blocks. They've got art that they can draw with code. They've got music that they can make with code. So these are problems, again, that they care about, problems that they can work with their classmates and their teachers to solve for their community, again, in an engaging and fun way. And sort of back to the computational thinking piece, we really see this as a framework for learning how to learn. It's not about learning one specific computing programming language. That's not the goal of what you'll walk away with Kano. It's getting a taste, a feeling empowered to talk about using computers and understanding how and being able to use the tools that will then allow you to go on and invent whatever it is you may want to create. And we've seen fantastic inventions coming from the community. And so I would say Kano is really an invention platform and the community around that platform. And I did put together this computer. The last thing I'll do is plug it into the screen. So again, in the matter of, I think I was probably a little bit over 3 minutes, I was able to build the computer, and then once I get it powered up, I'm able to interact with the software. So
That's brilliant. Thanks, Joanna.
how was my multitasking?
Thanks. Joe.
Okay. Here is a microbit, and thankfully it's flashing at you, so I hope you can see it. I'll pass it around the audience in a couple of minutes or so. This microbit's asking me to press button B. This is the out-of-the-box kind of experience. So when I press button B, something else happens. It's got 2 input buttons here. It's got a battery and a JXT connector, and calling things what they are is important. It's the bare board, so you can see what's on a microbit. I've made it wearable. I put a pin on the back, and I've Velcroed my batteries on. But if I took that off, you'd see the accelerometer and the compass, and we call that out on the back with labels as well, so kids can see where the microchips are on the back and where those other smart components are. We've got a reset button, we've got a Bluetooth antenna, and now we're kind of playing a game too. We've got an edge connector at the bottom, so I can experiment and program for the onboard technology, and I can also connect things to my microbit. So if I throw that down to you guys, there you go. Now, as I said, we're giving away up to 1 million of those devices. So if you're 11 to 12, you're entitled to a microbit, whether you're in formal education or not, whether you're homeschooled, whether you're in a referral unit, whoever you are, if you're 11 to 12 in the UK, that's your tech, and that computer belongs to you. We have done lots of things with it. This is one of our more complex makes. In the green room, it was measuring something like 900 parts of CO2 in that small space at the back. Air is really clean here. It's 303 parts per million of CO2. We use this as an alien detector ray on our live lessons the other week. So our CO2 sensor is hooked up to the microbit, and we've got speakers too. I can calibrate it. There we go, and it's calibrated at 325 parts. And if Joanna could breathe on that for me. There you go. And then you'll see the reading increase. And then as it increases by more than 200 parts, the alarm goes off, and we were using that to detect life on Mars last week. And I've got one more challenge. And if whoever can tell me what tune this is, you can actually win yourselves a microbit today. And you probably didn't know that when you walked in today. We've found by using talent and brand, obviously I work for the BBC, we're a broadcaster, and we've found that we can bring more kids to the party if we use favourite brands and talent and engage them in things that they might not necessarily be drawn to. And that's been very important for us in taking those key messages to Microbit to all of those year 7s. So it's a kind of name that tune. I've hooked up my speaker, so prepare. Any ideas? I'll give you a clue. It's a popular boy band. Hey? Yeah, no. Ponder on that one. I'll play it again when we finish. And if anybody gets it, then tweet me at Mrs. Claessens and a Microbit will be yours. Or check out our website, might give you a clue. Cheers.
Thanks very much, Joe. And Filippo,
Right.
you show us what you've got.
So what we do is a little bit different because we tackle, we create products for 3 to 6 year olds. So it's the youngest group of children that we look after. And so what we've invented is the first tangible programming interface that children can use without a screen or literacy. And the way that the system works is that there is a small, friendly wooden robot called Cubetto, which means the little cube. And the idea is that you're telling a story with it. The children decide where he begins and ends his journey through a gridded map that unfortunately I don't have with me. But what we're going to try and do is make him run off the stage, right? And then I have this interface board, which you can think of as a keyboard or as a blank piece of paper. And you have these tangible blocks which make up a hands-on procedural programming language. How many of you in the audience know what the Logo Turtle or Logo programming language is? So, some of you, right? So it's an educational programming language invented at MIT by Seymour Papert that was used to introduce programming to children. And what children actually do, they can then create a meaningful sequence of instructions, and they're playing with the cue, which is the fundamental, which is the basic concept that anybody needs to grasp to understand programming. So what they do, in this case, I want Cubetto to run off the stage, and he's facing that way. So I would like to create a sequence that turns him left, and then makes him go forward, and hopefully makes him go off the stage. Children love to run him off tables. So I know that he needs to turn left, and I can take my block. I already know that my yellow one is the right one to turn him left, and then I put my forward block in. And once I press the go button, this big green button, as a 3-year-old, I've not only just designed my first program, my first meaningful algorithm, but I've watched it being executed right in front of me. Oh, Jesus. Look at that. It's right on the edge.
You need to iterate your program.
Well, I'll create a new sequence that will run him off. So let's try this. Yay. But here's what we've, yeah, it's pretty cool. But what I've done then, I created a sequence which wasn't correct, and then I debugged it, and I created another one that completed my task. So this is actually child's play. It's only for 3 to 6 year old children. But what they're actually playing with are curriculum map programming concepts like the queue, functions, subroutines, actually have a function line and a function block, even object-oriented programming. And any programming concept that you can think of, you can actually introduce to children using this playset. And the idea or the goal behind this is not to teach them a programming language, but to teach them that they can break down complex problems into simple steps and solve them together. It doesn't use a screen, so it's incredibly social. That was a conscious choice to have smaller children work with their hands. And because it doesn't use any language, it's accessed in the same way anywhere in the world. This programming language is the same here in India, in South America. And the other thing that I would like to say that we're particularly proud of, we didn't design it for this purpose, we realized this afterwards, is that this is actually the only programming system for children who are non-sighted or partially sighted. And they can use it in exactly the same way that a sighted child uses this. So that's the powerful part of this product and how it creates inclusion with different disabilities.
Thank you. Could I just say, I'm going to ask the panelists some questions in a minute, but when I'm doing training, I always make it a rule never to use technology because it always goes wrong. So I think they've been very brave. So can we just give them a round of applause, please? Thanks. Well, the first question I want to ask is a kind of high-level theoretical question, and I'm going to ask Filippo to kick us off, if you don't mind. I just wonder how the maker movement ties into the whole idea of 21st century learning, but also something we picked up on in our earlier discussions, the whole idea of constructivism and the wider maker movement. Do you think you could wax lyrical for a couple of minutes and other people chip in? Thanks.
Sure. So when we think about the maker movement or makers at Primo, we think of making as an extremely broad discipline. Anybody who creates anything, whether it's haberdashery, hardware electronics like this, or joinery, is a maker in reality. It's a movement that was born, it's basically the modern version of hobbyism, right? But it started with entities like Maker Media and Maker Fairs, which I think all of you have heard of, and actually a website called Instructables. And the whole idea was to create informal services that provided step-by-step guides for people to access projects in their own time at home for technical projects that would have otherwise only been accessible or doable if you had technical knowledge. And so it's the reason why it's extremely popular is because first of all it provides a lot of informal learning of things that would otherwise be technical or really inaccessible, and it also provides a lot of diversity. There's this huge range of people. For example, in America you have 137 million people that define themselves as makers, right? And that's almost half of the population that can define themselves or can identify themselves with a group of people and with a word that is pretty cool. It's about making something. And so it's an extremely inclusive movement that allows so many people to be a part of it, and it really promoted informal learning of things that were inaccessible before, and that's the reason why it's become so popular. Thanks.
Joanna, do you wish to chip in? You had a few things to say about constructivism.
Sure. And I think something that's interesting, and you mentioned Seymour Papert, is that a lot of these ideas have been around for a long time. And we're seeing a rise in popularity now. And I think there are a number of reasons that we can point to. So one, the idea that our relationship with technology is changing, and it's going to continue to change. And when we look at 21st century skills, and we look at a lot of the reports that are coming out around the gap between going through the formal education system and what employers are looking for, we see that the population isn't always prepared. So there's been a lot of focus on career and technical education sort of at the end of the pipeline. And in a lot of ways, the maker movement is meant to address that earlier in the pipeline by giving a framework and helping young people learn how to learn. So it's really the tools, the modern tools for getting young people interested and curious and give them the ability to learn how to learn in a world that is consistently changing. And the other piece there is around engagement. Talking about, this is a global conference, and we've talked about the US, we've talked about what's happening here in the UK. I think something that we're seeing globally is that it's not only about skills, but it's about engagement. So we're losing young people early, and there's a report I really like that was put out from King's College called the Aspires Report, and it talks about how young people who aren't interested in STEM by age 10 are way less likely to be interested by age 14. And we're seeing dropout rates not only necessarily correlated with poverty, and there was a study in Latin America showing that dropout rates are now in a lot of cases, correlated more with lack of interest. So what we're trying to do is to capture young people earlier in the pipeline, give them the tools that will then enable them and get them interested in engaging with the world around them.
Thank you. The Aspires report was that? Yeah, lovely. Jo?
Hi. I'm working with a girl on a project at the moment. She's 8, and she's trying to make a fly machine. Fly machine with a microbit? Well, not quite, but what we're using the microbit to do is to detect free fall. So there she is on a wet Sunday afternoon, jumping off ledges with the 2 umbrellas, trying to make this flying machine. And we're using the microbit to detect free fall. And we iterate it loads of times because it's not working that well, and then we get to a point. And then we get stuck. And then I call on one of the partners, and I'm like, what's in your free fall function? We need to mod this. And he said, you know what, I made that for Abby Hutty. Abby Hutty, she works at Airbus, and she was doing some experiments in a test lab which were about parachute falls. She designed stuff for the Mars rover. So it was like, oh, wow. So there's this function that you wrote with Abby Hutty, and we can use that, we can mod that. And then he sends me a picture of her in a test lab with a microbit. So then, as the narrative develops and the story unfolds, the girl's able to mod that code and to work up her own experiments and start to make connections and make sense of the information that we're kind of talking about. And that kind of constructivism and that making sense of the world. Now, she's 8. She might not find, know explicitly that there's a destination in aerospace if she does this kind of thing. But she'll take on board that which she's able, and she's enriched by these examples and that activity. So, yeah.
If I could add something, I think that as humans, we like to create and we like to share what we make. And what the maker movement does is that it really celebrates human ingenuity, however big or small your achievement may be. And I think that that's an extremely powerful and an attractive thing to bring into education, because it's about experimenting with your hands, and it's about trial and error. And I think that for the first time, we were brought up thinking that anything that we can dream of, anything that we can make, we can build, we can make happen. And that may have not have been true, but I think for the first time in history, the reality of the technology and of the knowledge that is out there has caught up with our dream of making that happen. So I think that the maker movement is about making things and making dreams and the things that we imagine really happen, and that can really happen because of these kind of tools today. So that's really contributed to that.
Thank you. Can I ask you a question? And this is one that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, which is really nasty, isn't it? But I can't resist. But it will tie into a question we did discuss. Just listening to the kind of things you've just been talking about, and especially that ray gun and the free fall of the Mars mission and everything. When I used to teach ICT and computing, I used to set the kids spreadsheet assignments which would say things like, you've got a spaceship, this is the amount of fuel it uses, according to how fast you go, how much fuel would you need to have if you were going to Mars, all of that kind of stuff. So my two-part question is, number one, specifically to that, would you see these kind of maker tools as a way of enhancing that kind of activity by saying, all right, we've spoken about it, now let's actually try and demonstrate it in some way, let's play around with the free fall thing, could that work? But the wider question is, how can teachers use these tools in general to actually achieve what they're trying to achieve in the curriculum? So I don't know who wishes to go first, hopefully someone. Joe? Oh.
It's challenging because I work a lot in schools and also in informal education as well. And you get the time and the space at a Coder Dojo to noodle away and follow your passion and your interests for hours and hours. And kids like to come together to do that. In a structured environment of school, I think the offer is about connecting the dots and establishing that understanding of computing across the piece. For the most part, I program like an 8-year-old, and I learn the bits that I need to do to make the make that I'm doing. I hope that this generation that receive microbits will start to put together that complete understanding of these concepts in science and computing and technology, which will just really enable them to invent absolutely anything.
Oh, lovely, thank you. Filippo?
I think it's true because it promotes your own learning. Like Joanna was saying, you learn about learning. So the more you start tinkering with something, the more you realize that you can build the things that you're interested in. And it helps teachers because it helps children being independent about learning, about building their own Kano computer and then enjoying it by themselves, playing Minecraft or something that means something to them. And again, the maker movement is about projects, it's about doing things that are meaningful. And for a teacher in a classroom, for example, an important thing about the maker approach of the maker movement is free information and having access to what somebody else is doing around the world and implementing that activity within the classroom to suit the needs of their students or the group that they're playing with. For us, in early learning specifically, it's less about tinkering with the hardware, but it's about creating scenarios that mean something to the younger children that are within that classroom. So a younger teacher can decide, okay, well, we're talking about trains, or we're talking about clouds, or we're talking about the Earth's crust this week, and they can create stories using maps and tailoring the narrative to suit their children and to create more engagement and to create something that's more interesting to them.
Just one quick add. I mean, great points raised. I think we're talking about two things that may sound opposing, but in a lot of ways are coming together. So you have this concept of student-led learning and with an instructor in the classroom. So part of what it's on us is to take something that is aimed at empowering young people and getting them to feel and connected to problems that they care about and empowered to solve those problems, while helping to package those things in a way that instructors can see the outcomes and help align with their objectives and the 21st century skills that they're aiming to teach. And I think what we're just defining as makerspaces is this framework that helps them implement that in the classroom. And to your point around the resources that are available now, you can see what teachers and with Instructables, you can see what others across the world are doing, and it's really on us in this community to help bring these products into the classroom in meaningful ways.
Lovely, thank you. I think we've got time for one or possibly two questions. Does anyone have a question? Can't believe no one's got a question. Young lady there, when the mic comes, could you just say who you are and where you're from, please? Thank you.
My name's Sarah Custer. I'm a journalist at an international education news website and magazine called The Pi News. We don't focus necessarily on young learners, so this might be a bit out of your specializations, but I'm just curious to know if you have any solutions in mind from the maker community for people like myself or older than me that have just as little knowledge about coding or computers and are just as scared of it as young people.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think there are a few components of the maker movement that make it really exciting, and part of it is the ethos, the idea that the barrier to entry for making should be here, and we should help people, bring people into the community, whether that's cutting with paper or building a tower or using more sophisticated technology. So I think the advice I would have is the community around this is one of the key things that's really exciting about it, and looking online at Instructables, at the wonderful resources put out by the Pi Foundation, and they're categorizing. We have a lot of resources now, and I think it's about curating them and helping you find the resources that you might identify with most. But the resources are definitely out there online, and if you look even at events in the community, I'm not sure where you live, but I think we see these things popping up in different parts of the US and globally. And yeah, I think a lot of the information is out there, and just part of the maker movement is just get going and try something.
Yeah. I think I have a question for you, actually, because I think you're asking the wrong question. How can I get started in this? Why do you want to get started in this? What are you trying to achieve? What are you trying to fix a table? Do you want to build something for your home? What interests you? That's your starting point. And then, as Joanna's saying, you can go online, you can go to Maker Faire, you can access this community, which is huge, right? The Maker Fairs, for example, we had 151 Maker Fairs last year. One of them was on the lawn of the White House. And you have more people attending Maker Fairs worldwide than they did Taylor Swift's 1989 World Tour. I don't know why I know that, but it's 1.1 million people.
That's a song.
Yeah. But if you have to start with what you're passionate about. And I think it's the same with the BBC Microbit, whether you want to build a ray gun or your umbrella.
I think whether you're 20, 40, or 60, the first time you transfer a program onto your microbit and it lights up, it's like, oh, wow, I did that moment. And it's all free and open.
There's the music. That means get off stage. Can I just ask you to thank the panelists for me, please? Thank you.